Thank you so much for joining us. And I was hoping Chef is going to be here so that there's some male company for me. Uh, but, the topic that we are discussing today is soulful living. And since morning, Sister Jayanti was there in the morning, and I was telling her that the whole purpose of doing this conclave or getting together to discuss this is that we are not waiting till later part of our lives to start looking at spirituality, and instead, how can this be the basics with which we start with, so that we can understand the spiritual mindset and use that in everything that we do, and ensure that our the lifestyle as a process is happier and brings joy and fulfillment to us and to those around us. So I think we've got the right set of people with us. We've got a doctor, and I think that empathy is the underlying fundamental basic with which you need to serve the patients. So we'd like to understand if spirituality helps you bring that compassion, empathy. Sister Jayanti is there, who's talking of spiritual life and way of being. And Ira, you've been spreading a lot of not just physical wellness but also mental wellness, and yoga, as we know, is a unison of both. So your perspectives will be really, really useful to anyone who will watch this conversation. Let me begin with you, Sister Jayanti, with a very basic question, which is the theme. How do we bring spiritual mindset in everything that we do as a human being?
Om Shanti. If I take the first step of spirituality, then it means to come back to the awareness of who I am as the inner being, the soul. And so we describe that as soul consciousness. So now as I speak to you, if I see you as a soul, the tone of my voice, my attitude, my behavior is going to be filled with spirituality. If I see you as a stranger, someone who I've met only once or twice, just with a physical vision, then my behavior is very different. And so everything that I'm thinking and saying and doing, if that's based on the awareness of the inner being, which is my true identity, how if I'm black, then that stays with me all the time. It influences everything I do. That's a reality. But that's only the skin. Black or white or brown is only the skin. When I come to the awareness of soul and I stay in that consciousness, everything I say and do is impacted by that.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. Ira, like I said, that the work that you do and the awareness of physical and mental wellness that you are spreading through your work, how do you see the connection between physical and spiritual well-being, and how can individuals strike a balance between the modern day lifestyle and nurturing their souls and spiritual selves?
I feel that in this age that we're living in, it's so important to inculcate a physical practice. And that physical practice can really aid leading to the spiritual path. So in yoga, we have different koshas, we have different layers. And to get to your innermost layer, you have to first penetrate your most physical kosha, your most outer being. So a physical practice of yoga can be deeply, deeply healing, can be deeply useful in getting to understand your more inner state. So this has happened so often. I hear these stories so often with students that they've come to yoga to lose weight, or they've come to yoga for better skin, or all of those things saying, I'm getting married, I need to be more fit. I need to, I have diabetes, I need to be more fit. But then a physical practice of yoga will lead them to a more meditative path, because you are working with energies, you are clearing up your chakras, you are working on a very, very deep level. And especially because our thoughts are so radsic. Our thoughts are, there's so much coming our way, right? We're constantly just assaulted with information at all times. So a physical practice is very important, because yoga is not just a physical practice. You're really, every single shape that you're making with your body is working energetically. And that energetic change in the body will eventually lead to you becoming more still in the mind, more still in the body, more still in the breath, and that'll help you just being more still in your life. So a lot of times for a 17-year-old, it's not easy to meditate, or a 16-year-old, but it's easier for them to do a yoga practice. And just by beginning to do that practice, they'll eventually come to a more meditative state of mind. So even for me, on certain days, it's not possible for me to sit in meditation. There's just too much happening around me. But on those days, if I do a physical yoga practice, I find that my mind is more still, my breath is more still, and I'm able to get those koshas under my control so I can work on deeper states of mind. So I really, really think that this physical practice of yoga, even though it's ancient, it's so relevant for modern times, because we're getting busier and busier and busier in our life. So the practices that we need, they need to be more active so they can eventually bring us back to stillness.
I'd like to delve deeper into what you just said. There's certain people who are perceived to be the ones who have the knowledge to be able to share it with others, right? And we understand the values of our ancient wisdom and practices to bring calmness to us, right? Now, when young people come to you, and you have this knowledge which you wish to share, and you just spoke about, your body and taking care of it. Swami Mukundananda was just here, and he was talking of that, you treat your body as a temple, as a gift given by God, and you eat because you need to take care of that body, right? How do you share this knowledge, this wisdom with the youngsters who are coming in, who question everything that we are telling them?
I really feel that if you share that statement with someone, that just, what you just said, people may or may not be able to relate to it so much, So I think especially a younger generation, right? They'll say, okay, yes, my body's a temple, but I really want to wear, I want to wear fashionable clothes to showcase my temple. That's kind of the mindset. So it's important to also give spiritual knowledge to them in a way which is very relatable, which is very, very relatable to them. And I feel that through a physical yoga practice, we say that, hey, first, come to yoga, you'll feel more, you'll feel fit, you'll get more fit. That fitness that you have in your body is going to lead to more fitness of the mind. This will help you accomplish your goals. This will help you accomplish your, it'll get you better marks. That's something that we tell students, that come to yoga, it'll help you focus. You'll get better grades, when you do this. And they come because they all want better grades. And eventually we know that practice is going to bring them to a deeper journey. So that fundamental for us as teachers remains that, but I do feel that you need to put a little bit of bait out there, because the whole world has become like this, right? There's always baiting going on, but I say, okay, it's fine to bait, because what we're trying to bait them towards is a far more healthy, far more positive lifestyle. Right. So, and that's where I think, actually a lot of people come to me and say, yoga in the West has been portrayed in so many different ways. Is this correct? The way that yoga is being portrayed in the West with like yoga clothing brands and yoga mats and so much of commercialization, is that okay? And I actually say, yes, it is okay. because I feel like all of it is helping yoga become more popular. All of it is helping yoga become more popular, and that popularity of yoga will lead more people towards yoga, and fundamentally, it'll get them on the path. I met a Swami. I met a Swami at the Chinmaya Mission just, I think, last year, and he's a wonderful Swami giving beautiful lectures, and he told me that, I asked him, how did you become a Swami? He said, how? I started by doing yoga. And how come you went to yoga? He said, what? In those days, there was a lot happening about yoga and six-pack abs. There was a lot of people in Bollywood doing it. And I just got curious about this, about Bollywood and six-pack abs and yoga. So I went for a yoga class. And from that yoga class, the teacher there would mention Chinmaya Mission, would mention this. And eventually I came to Chinmaya Mission. And today he's a Swami. And actually he's the head of the Delhi Center. He's the head of the Delhi Center. So a wonderful person. And this is where his path led him to. So, just attending a yoga class led him to this path. So I do think that in this modern age, you do need all of this to help you to, and making yoga more popular through whatever which way. I'm absolutely fine with it, because I do feel like eventually it leads to a very positive core.
Awesome. Dr. Malpani, you're a doctor. We are living, specifically when it comes to healthcare, and I know it well because that's one area that I've been working on. In the last 1 year, I think I've interviewed about 70 to 80 very well-known doctors, including you. And one thing that has come out very strongly is a change that has happened over the last 3 decades. There was a time in India we would treat our doctors as God, with full faith कि जो उन्होंने बोल दिया सर आँखों पे हम वही करेंगे क्योंकि उन्होंने बोल दिया है. That relationship is under stress today. Today when we go to a doctor, we go with a suspicion कि ये पैसा कमाने के लिए मेरे को बोल रहे हैं ऑपरेशन करना है या genuinely मेरे को ज़रूरत है. And the question when we look at reference is that can you suggest a genuine doctor? Right? That's the question that we ask for. Earlier it used to be, do you know a doctor that I could go to? Now, with this much of distrust in the healthcare system, there are doctors who do the right thing. There are doctors who genuinely feel for the patient. Do you think that having a spiritual mindset can help bring back that trust in the healthcare system?
You're absolutely right, Harbinder. Once it was a noble profession, and today it is no more. Today, unfortunately, medical ethics are out, malpractices are rampant, and people even doctors don't want to follow the rules that were set. So absolutely, it's become a very, very difficult thing now. Even for us to practice, it's becoming difficult. In fact, let me tell you something. Half my consulting is not about what to do, because people have already gone on the net. They know what they want. Especially, I'm an infertility specialist, so they are shopping around. They've been to several doctors. They come to me after doing 6, 7 IVFs. They know what is IVF. And they are looking up the net, or the other doctors have cheated them, or probably done the wrong things. There are new technologies every single day. It's a very, very rapidly advancing science. I mean, the test tube baby, Louis Braun, was found 40 years ago. But almost every day there's a new technique. I mean, you heard Swami Mukananda, he mentioned a few. There's PGD, which is prenatal genetic diagnosis. There is stem cell therapy. There are loads of therapies, loads of interventions. And half my time I'm trying to tell them, hey, this is not good enough. This is yet not come up. So don't do this treatment. It is very, very difficult now to tell patients, because I know that either they think I'm a crackpot, or they think that this doctor is not good enough, and they just go to the neighboring doctor, and who would do them. Let me give you a classic example of let's say surrogacy, which you all know. Surrogacy has become a common word. Now, I have done my first surrogacy case probably in 95 or 96. It was a genuine case where the patient did not have a uterus, but nobody knew about it, and we were doing it as a part of IVF treatment or a reproductive treatment. But today, with the Bollywood stars coming up, practically every Bollywood, Hollywood star has had surrogacy. And today we have women just coming and say, doctor, oh, I don't want to go through the pregnancy. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be going through the delivery pains, and just do surrogacy. And I have a hard time telling them and teaching them, oh, motherhood is the best thing that can happen. Part of motherhood is going through pregnancy, breastfeeding. And again, they think this is an old, typical auntie, mentality. And of course, they don't do it. So it's becoming harder and harder. So how do we do it? So I think that our value system, as we were growing up, the values, the principles that were taught by my parents, by my teachers, and now, as I grow, reading all the spiritual scriptures, I'm trying to read them, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, I'm trying to read. And then you realize that if you follow those, if you follow the right path, and how do you do it? I think for me, it's my passion. I've been very, very passionate about being an IVF doctor right since my residency days. And I realized when I was a resident in KEM, this is what I did want to do. So I went abroad, got back the technology. I could have very well stayed abroad. I didn't do that, came back. And I have a magical profession. I would say even a spiritual one, because we create life every single day in my lab. We grow babies. When we were young, I didn't realize it. And it was more technical. Oh, okay, we're adding the egg and the sperm. We're creating a zygote. Wow, wow, wow. And today I say, oh my God, this is what is spirituality. It is a spiritual experience. The main question is, what is life? How does it exist? Who am I? When does life begin? I know these are very difficult questions to answer, complex issues, and we have stalwarts out here who would give you probably better answers. But scientifically, it has been proven that life begins when the sperm fertilizes the egg. And that's what we see every day. And I'm yet getting excited. Though I'm doing it for 33 years, I get excited when I see that embryo growing in the lab from 2 cells, 4 cells, to a ball of cells, millions of cells. And that passion keeps me growing. And if you want to do something, and if you're good at it, if you have a passion, I think you're automatically good at it. If you're good at it, success comes, fame comes, money comes. And without realizing, we just went on working without looking at the fruits. And that is exactly what Bhagavad Gita teaches you. That is what they say is, do not look at the result, just keep on working. And that is what is Karma Yoga today. And I think we've just followed these simple principles without looking here and there. It's very, very hard because, in a society, you want, to work without wanting that money or the glory or those awards. We are basically ostracized half the time. People will not call you for a conference because you call them for a conference, they call you. It works that way. But I think if you concentrate on your work, and that's what we've always followed, until today, I think it's worked very well. So I think, you just follow the right path, and I think you have it all.
Right. Before I go to the next question, let me welcome Ranveer, Chef Ranveer Brar. Why don't you come and join us with the stage? We are getting the chair right here.
I apologize. Sorry.
No. It's absolutely... So, my next question is to all of you, and I'll take the liberty to ask Sister Jayanti to be the last one to answer that for a specific reason. Let me begin with you, Ranveer. That considering the diverse backgrounds of the people sitting here, each one has a very different profession. How do you view the intersection of spirituality and your professional life? Are there any specific practices and insights about how you ensure the spiritual way of working and imbibing them into your professional daily life?
So I cook for a living, right? And I think some of I'll quickly take 10 seconds to get my senses right and to pick up from where we left. I think after some point in time, the question becomes irrelevant whether your profession chose you or whether you chose your profession, right? What really remains is it becomes an extension of who you are. And because you spend a lot of time doing that, it becomes your mode of self-discovery, your vehicle of self-discovery. For a lot of us in today's world who want to, who driven, right? This is what we do 20 hours a day. And after some point in time when you really forget why you're doing it, it is not for the money. It's not for, that's when that profession becomes your window to yourself. That's what it is. That's what has happened to me, right? Being a chef for some time was probably about the perks that come with it. And after a point in time, all that becomes irrelevant, I think, in life. And what you realize is that's the best way for you to find yourself. The best path for you to find yourself is in your work. Again, I'm not really, I don't want to put heavy words like karma yogi and everything else there, but considering in today's life, this is what we do, and a big part of our lives is what we do. You've really got to find the divinity and spirituality in what you do. And if you, what I've learned over the years is, आध्यात्म और धर्म का कोई कनेक्शन तो एनीवेज कोई नहीं है, राइट? जो कनेक्शन है वो आई थिंक इट्स अ कनेक्शन ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट द फंडामेंटल प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ लाइफ, द फंडामेंटल philosophy of why we are here, and the fundamental quest has been there for millennia or millennia prior to that. That fundamental question hasn't changed, and the fundamental answer is yet to be found, and everybody's on their route to discovery to find that fundamental answer. That fundamental question as to why we are here. तो वो आप रास्ता कौन सा अख्तियार कर रहे हैं, एक टाइम बाद वो मैटर करना बंद हो जाता है. और for me, that's what being a chef means. Every day I cook, the joy that I get, the ability to surrender to what I do for me is my spiritual window to the world every day. That's basically the long and short of,
That's beautiful.
Yeah. मैं एक और चीज़ मैं आपसे पूछूंगा इसी के अंदर, बिफोर आई गो बैक टू दिस क्वेश्चन फॉर एवरीवन एल्स. क्यों कोई जब खाना बनाता है तो हमारे को स्वाद आता है, और सेम रेसिपी सेम किचन कोई और बनाता है तो हमें अच्छा नहीं लगता?
इसके दो आंसर्स हैं. सुपरफिशियली जो आंसर एक सेंटेंस में ख़त्म करता है, हम लोग कहते हैं खाने से भाव का निर्वाह होता है, राइट? ये एक फंडामेंटल सुपरफिशियल आंसर है जो जल्दी समझ में आ जाता है. जो थोड़ा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड आंसर है वो ये है कि जब आप खाना बनाते हैं तो you're at a spiritual level, what you're creating is becoming a part of somebody, not just for now but for generations to come. Anna para Brahma, right? We're all made of food eventually. The DNA in us, the information that we carry, the information that we've carried for millennia, our body and everything in it is purely and fundamentally absorbed from the nutrition that is created from the nutrition that is absorbed from food. Now, if what you're doing is so powerful at such a strong level, the impact, the emotional impact of it, right? भाव का निर्वाह वाला जो stage है, is a result of the life that you're connecting to and the life that you're creating via the food that you're creating, and the life that your food is imbibing in the other person, right? It is not the स्वाद fundamental emotion नहीं है. I think बहुत हम सब शेफ्स हैं और एक सर्कल के बाद हम ये रियलाइज करते हैं, सॉरी आंसर लंबा हो रहा है तो, कि फंडामेंटल इमोशन स्वाद नहीं है, राइट? बिकॉज फंडामेंटल पर्पस खाने का स्वाद नहीं है. फंडामेंटल पर्पस खाने का है नरिशमेंट, राइट? और जब आप वो स्वाद के फंडामेंटल इमोशन को हटा देते हैं और नरिशमेंट के फंडामेंटल पे वर्क करते हैं, आप रियलाइज करते हैं दैट एवरीथिंग दैट नरिशमेंट डज stays on way longer than that moment, right? So you might not remember the exact taste of the dish. You remember the moment when you had it, and it will come back to you. Taste is a trigger of memory. It is not what stays with you. The memory stays with you. Taste just triggers it, right? So वो memory का जो connection है, वो that by itself is a connection that's alive and spiritual and always within us.
Do you think that this mindset has led you to succeed? Of spirituality, nurturing?
This is spirituality, अध्यात्म जो है वो इंडिविजुअल होता है. मैं इस तरह नॉर्मली सबके साथ बातें नहीं करता क्योंकि प्लेटफॉर्म ऐसा है. उसका जो आउटकम है वो हमारी पर्सनालिटी में ज़रूर झलकता है. लेकिन ऑल ऑफ अस आर ऑन एन इनवर्ड्स इंडिविजुअल स्पिरिचुअल जर्नी. Some of us project it because we feel we can make the world better. Some of us project it by discourse. Some of us project it by what we do. तो मुझे I think it's giving it too much meaning to say कि इस वजह से सक्सेस ज़्यादा है. ये इनवर्ड्स जर्नी है, बहुत पर्सनल है. अगर इसका प्रोजेक्शन कहीं ना कहीं किसी की लाइफ बेटर कर सकता है तो.
Dr. Malpani, same question. You know, the context is, आपने जब बताया था, when you were talking about that, you know, the process of a birth taking inside the womb and the journey of motherhood is, I think, the most pious spiritual journey that could be there, because that's the only relationship, I think, is when, without putting too much of thought in your mind, by default, your state of mind is of giving. आप अपने बच्चे के लिए naturally कुछ ना कुछ करते रहते हैं without thinking उसका result क्या होगा, मेरे को कुछ मिलेगा नहीं मिलेगा. So what are the kind of tools that you may have used or insights from your own experience which you feel have helped you in doing what you're doing better than anyone else who may not have had that same mindset?
Yeah. So I'm an infertility specialist, like I said, and I deal with infertile couples. So infertility is just not a medical problem. It's very much a social, very much a psychological, emotional one. So what you need to remember is to do a holistic treatment for these people. And that itself, I think, helps. Because instead of maybe just doing a sonography, just operating, you spend so much time counseling the patient, the time that you spend. And me versus other doctors, that's what I tell them, that it's not important, that putting that embryo is not important. All the other doctors can do it. But what is different, it's the time that we give them. The time just listening to the patient, empathy, compassion. And again, all these are important in spirituality. This is what we teach people. This is what everybody's taught. And this is what we've done. I spent hours talking to the patient up to a point that my staff gets fed up and says, look, we need to go home. And there I'm just talking to them about it. So that, I think, is spiritual care, or spirituality comes in there. Now, another aspect of spirituality, I mean, just trying to say, is knowledge. I think everybody says, like Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, they all say, learn, get knowledge, impart knowledge, and get the inner wisdom. And I think we spent a lot of time empowering our patients. Patient education is a very, very important aspect for us. And we want patients to be intelligent, to be informed patients, so they can do their right treatment. We have a very comprehensive website. I've written books. In fact, I've just written a book called Tries, Sighs, and Lullabies, which speaks on the social and emotional angle of infertility. We have a website which answers questions. We have blogs, we have YouTube videos, we answer emails and WhatsApp for free. But that's what we're trying to educate. It's not come to us, but know what you're doing. Do not get cheated. Infertility patients are very gullible, they're very, very naive, and they would do anything because they're so desperate for a baby. You tell them to stand on your head, in fun I say, doctor, what can I do? And I say, okay, go stand on your head every day. And there are patients who literally do that, I would say.
But that's actually pretty good for infertility.
Yeah. I wish it was so easy, I would probably have you come in every day and teach them. Yeah, but I wish it was so easy. And
That's the thing, it is easy, but people don't do yoga.
So that's, that is what we teach them. I use spiritualism, in fact. Again, our results. The result is not 100%. With the best of the treatment, with the best of the embryo, best of the clinic and doctors, the results are just about 35 to 40% per cycle, which means every time you put an embryo, the chances are only 40%. And there are doctors who would fool them and say it's 80%, 90%, yes, but that's not true. So 60% are IVF failures, and that is what we teach the patient, along with giving them a ray of hope, teaching them faith in themselves, faith in God, faith in the doctor. We tell them to be realistic and to say, hey, look, there are only certain answers that we can answer. With anything, there is something beyond our science. And that teaches us doctors to be humble too. That even with the best, do you think, you're God at times? Because people really touch your feet and say, oh my God, you're like God. And I say, no, that's not what I want. But sometimes you think when you get a good rate. But that teaches you to be humble. That teaches you the spirituality, tells you that yes, there's a higher divine power somewhere behind, where even with the best of the things, they don't get pregnant. So I think that really teaches them. And I do encourage spirituality or spiritualism. When I'm doing a transfer, I tell them, go ahead, you can say your prayers, you can chant. Very often they're chanting Gayatri mantras, Naukar mantras, they do whatever. So we encourage them to do meditation, yoga, whatever they feel, and we do encourage spiritualism. So I think in my practice, I use a lot of spirituality.
No, I think, I can tell you only one thing, that people are able to see through you. You may not know it. I mean, I can tell you of a situation where I lost my mother to cancer, and the treating doctor that was there, after a month, I went and actually thanked him for all the efforts that he had made, because I could see through that he was doing the best possible to treat whatever he could do. So, people can see through you and your efforts. When we look at what I was talking about, the intersection between spirituality and our profession, are there some insights when you look back and observe what has worked for you and the people who have come to you for guidance? What part of spirituality in you think has worked?
So I'm going to answer this question the way that I'm understanding it. So it's also an interesting question, because just a couple of hours ago, I was just having this thought. I said, is my life a lot more difficult because I'm a spiritual person? Would my life be a lot easier if I was more unconscious? I said, what if I was just living in New York City and in investment bank, and that was my circle of life? Would it be easier? Now we're having all of these deep thoughts all the time. You're more affected by what's happening because you're a more conscious person. I care about the earth more. And that begins to happen. When you become more conscious, you become more conscious about everything. You don't just become conscious about your own pain. You become more conscious about the pain of people around you. You become more conscious about this planet's pain, but animals' pain, the pain of plants, everything. So I said, wow, would it all just have been easier if I was less conscious? And I, in fact, I thought, would I have been a happier person if I was less conscious? Because I'm constantly, thinking that, oh my gosh, what is happening? I feel that I need to do so much more, because our everyone's life is going through so much change because of just the lifestyle that the modern world has. It also becomes more difficult, because as you're more conscious, you want to eat more consciously, you want to do everything more consciously. I said, wow, wouldn't have been just easy if I was just happy eating a McDonald's burger and fast food. But now I just want to make sure that, I'm putting the right energy into my food. I'm doing everything in the right way because I'm more conscious of that fact. So I really had those questions, and I thought to myself, and then I had to rewind. I had to rewind in my life when I took these decisions to take this more spiritual path. And it wasn't one decision. It's kind of, you set into motion a journey. So I rewinded and I went back to those levels, that kind of unsatisfaction I felt when I was doing very well in my corporate life, where I'd graduated from one of the best business schools in the world and was really living a very jet-setting lifestyle. And today I think to myself, I went back to those emotions. I went back to that time where I felt like I had everything, but there was such hollowness within. And now today, I may not have everything. I've taken certain steps and decisions in my life, which were difficult, because the spiritual path is a difficult one. A pilgrimage is always difficult. You're climbing, in a pilgrimage, you always climb up a mountain. You don't go down a mountain. That's the nature of a pilgrimage, which is kind of a physical representation of an inner spiritual journey, is that outer spiritual journey. It's always going to be, a temple will always be on top of a very difficult mountain. That's, of course, now you have helicopters and I have all of that, which is human beings trying to find shortcuts always. But it is a difficult path, but I think ultimately it's a more deeply satisfying one. And that kind of hollowness, which nothing can fill, will ultimately be filled only through a deeper spiritual journey, with understanding the deeper fundamentals of us as a soul and other people as souls and all of us as one common Brahman. So I think that's literally the thought that I had this morning, and this little conversation I had with myself, saying, am I making my life more difficult by being on a spiritual journey? And then the answer was no. I think that would have been a more unsatisfactory path. And I feel like mostly all human beings, they do come to this point. But for some of us it's earlier, for some people it's later. So you'll see suddenly senior citizens turning towards spirituality when they're 65, 70, 75, 80, 90 on their deathbeds. Suddenly they're like, wow, let's try and find that. Let's try and find that little seed which can give us that inner fulfillment, I think, is perhaps not the correct word, but at least some idea of that feeling. But maybe Sister Jayanti will give
that's exactly the reason we've got together, to understand that how can we make it early. Sister Jayanti, there's a reason why I took the liberty of having you the last one for this question, is because now you've heard everyone who is talking of bringing in spirituality in some form or the other in their profession to be able to serve and make a difference. But this panel is a curated one. We've picked up people who have demonstrated spiritualism as a part of their profession. Not all of us are blessed to be able to identify and know what is it that we need to do to create that spiritual thought process and mindfulness consciously inside of us, to use our profession to, like we said, serve others. What, in your opinion, is something that we could do that could catalyze that movement inside of us?
I found the answers very powerful and beautiful. I would just share that food is vibration. And so the person who's cooking in God's remembrance, and it's not ordinary food, it becomes prasad. And every single grain is counted for. So the vibration with which food is cooked, and the quality of the food itself, if it's plant-based, of course, it's a hugely different thing to any other type of food. And I was very interested to hear from your perspective the whole aspect of the sanctity of life which of course is the essential part of spirituality. And thank you for sharing your question, the question that you asked yourself. And for everybody else who's here, I would imagine that it's your questions that have brought you here today. Otherwise, everyone's got a busy lifestyle. You've got 1,000 things that could have taken your attention today, but you made the conscious choice of being here. And if you're online, again, time is precious, and you're given time to listen to all these things. And so I think that where there's questions that come up, let me pursue them further. Not just ignore them and say, okay, when I'm 60 years old or 70 years old, I'll explore it. But if the questions are there present at this moment, and I have to say that Hinduism, in which I was brought up, that didn't answer my questions. I was being told, it's a mystery, it's in the scriptures, and so you have to just trust it. I was exposed to Christianity from a very early age, convent school, so that's 4 years old, I think. So from convent school to then Church of England school, but through that whole time, attending all the religious programs and things, but again, no answers to my questions. And I want to come back to your question about youth. I think that the way you can reach young people is when you've looked for answers to these questions yourself, and you share those answers with young people. That's one thing. But the second is, nobody's really interested in just theory anymore. They want to have a practical experience. And so when you start to meditate, and especially when you understand how simple meditation can be, it's not complicated, it's not for recluse life, it's not to cut yourself off from the world. But when you start looking for answers to your questions and you realize that a lot of the answers are there within you, and you follow the path of meditation, then that's where you begin to have a real experience of who you are. And of course, it's a journey. It's not that you understand and enlightenment happens like magic. There's deeper and deeper and deeper layers that you come across. And I know that when I started my journey, I would say I knew 1/10, 100th of what I know about myself today. And so as you get answers and you explore further and further, and you experiment with the ideas that are being shared, and you begin to get the experiences that you've been looking for, that inner joy, that vision becoming broader and wider, an understanding that's much deeper. All the questions that you always have, why is it that things are happening the way they are today? Now, can an economist tell you? Can a biologist tell you? A scientist? Who can tell you why things are happening the way they are? Spirituality gives you a perspective through which you can truly understand what's going on, but also you can understand what it is you can do to contribute. You can't change the world alone, that's a fact. But what I can do is change myself for the better. And what I can do also is give a little finger of cooperation in the task of transformation, because I believe that this is a very, very important period of time in human history when we have so much information that it's difficult to digest it all, and nobody actually can. But what we can do is to be selective. Let me take the information that I need, what's useful for me, but also through all this information can I come to that state where there's knowledge. Not just information, but knowledge that is useful. And then as I begin to practice that knowledge, it leads me to wisdom. And following the path of wisdom through the connection with the divine, I'm actually able to come to where I can perceive truth and maybe even be the truth. And so I think if you have questions, don't suppress them, don't postpone them, but explore and find out what is behind those questions, and if there can be answers that you can have. So I think that these two things, getting your questions answered and experimenting with ideas and seeing where the experience leads you is important.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. Ira and Ranveer, my next question is to both of you. Do you think that being someone with a spiritual mindset, can help you be more creative in doing things that you do?
I think that being more, what did you say the word was, spiritually inclined? I think that applying the certain basic fundamentals of, I wouldn't even say spiritual, I would say conscious. Being a more conscious human being will definitely help you with creativity. And with your profession, for example, it'll just help you become more balanced, more mentally balanced. And when you're a more mentally balanced person, when you're able to forgive, for example, and you're not holding anger or resentment, you're able to be more mentally free. And you're applying those energies then in your work. So it just gives you a more, I would say, a more clear mindset. So I think just when you start exploring, a more conscious path or a spiritual path, you actually become more settled in yourself. And no matter what is happening in the world around you, no matter how people are behaving towards you, you're able to maintain that balance. And when you are more clear in your mind, your thinking is more positive, you're able to just think in a more creative way. I really feel like, I've written several books, fiction, nonfiction, and I would always be able to write better when I'd done my yoga practice. And the reason was I just felt more balanced. The mind was more balanced. And every time if I'm angry or upset or have those emotions, I'm not able to fuel my creative energies at all. All my energy is going towards those thoughts. And so I definitely feel that using all of these principles towards your work and applying them will definitely give you better results, because you just become a more peaceful person. You become a more peaceful person, a more happy person, a more balanced person, and you begin to understand, some of the truth that we spoke about, that it's not money or it's not success or it's not fame or any of those things which will give you that inner joy that we're searching. So I do feel like it just leads to a more balanced, more holistic, more wholesome life.
So I think it's very well said. Purely from, I'll just speak from my journey perspective and how I feel what has changed for me over a period of time is purely being, when we grow up as chefs, we're told that cooking is all about control, right? You're controlling time, you're controlling temperature, and so as a chef, you got to be in control of the kitchen, and that's the school of cooking that you sort of, all of us graduate from, and that's what our chefs teach us, that's what our books teach us. I think it's the journey that you take towards surrender. Life takes you to, I honestly believe that it's all you need to do is be present, and then life will take you in the right place. But that journey that we take towards surrender is what really shapes us as chefs. The fact then that when we realize that being a chef is not about being in control, but being in the moment, surrendering to the moment, the food in front of you, justifying the moment that you're in at that point in time. For me, that is a big part of who I am today. That's not how I grew up. That's not what I trained to be. But yes, that part of being aware and surrendering to the medium that is yours definitely has helped me in my profession. The other thing that I feel and I enjoy is the ability to forgive myself. Right? See, when you're in the moment, you're always aware of the choices that you have. And sometimes the choice is to work on it, and sometimes the choice is to forgive. Either ways, you made that choice. And till you can't surrender, you can never really forgive yourself. Sometimes it's just, you're more at peace because you need to forgive yourself. So I think that these are the aspects that sort of have made me calmer, better at work. Again, I think a very strong word that I don't want to sort of patronize there, but I feel a lot of us in today's world are trying to control the environment around us, wherein the objective of it all is, surrendering in the first place to the moment. You call it being mindful, you call it being aware, you call it being conscious, you call it, but the point is, it's a lot of, you gotta, the dichotomy is how do you, to surrender, you gotta fight with the mindset that you've grown up in. Now, how can you fight and surrender? So you gotta surrender to the context itself that you gotta control. It's a beautiful, for me, that's the whole joy of the beautiful dichotomy is what I enjoy. I mean, I know if I've confused people more. I just have one question. I'm so sorry. One answer and one question. Now, and this has always been there, and you just brought it to light. You spoke about enlightenment, and you spoke about a spiritual path, right? Is enlightenment a product of the process of taking a spiritual path? You got to do what you do, and then you'll get there. Or is enlightenment a purpose? How should you take the whole idea of enlightenment and spirituality, and how do you tie it together? One is, this is the purpose, right? And you take the path for the purpose. The other is, you take this path, and you'll get there. How does this relationship work? I'm so sorry. I know it's just. You said questions. I threw one at you.
I think that my own journey began with a moment of enlightenment, but as I've continued on my journey, there's greater and greater light that's come into my life. So it's not the end result, in a sense. It's something that happens day by day, on a daily basis. And I think that there can be something a child says to you, and it sets your mind ticking. And you say, there's a lot of sense in that. The child maybe didn't even understand. Or I see something in nature. And again, that sets a button going. And so it's a journey. And it's not just an end product, no.
I'll come to my last question because I've having this glaring screen, red color on for the last few minutes, that time's up. But Sister Jayanti, I really want to come and understand that if we really wish for spirituality to be a part of life of everyone from the very beginning, can we teach spirituality? Can we make it a part of a curriculum without it getting a connotation of religion?
It's happening because spirituality brings values in life. And I think you were talking about values earlier, but others have also been mentioning those. And what's happened is that because we've lost touch with the spirit that we are, the being inside, we've disconnected with the values of the human being. And now that people are recognizing that a world without values is a disaster, quite frankly, that's what it is. So there's different initiatives that are going on in which we take up the subject of values in education, and I'll give you something that you can check out, Alive, ALIVE, and it gives you information about, we call it the living values journey. Living values with both sense, living your values, but values that are alive. And it's a process of education that's being taken up by some schools and in other schools by individuals. it's true that values can only be caught. You can't teach them. They can't be taught. But teachers who understand these concepts are themselves sharing those values with the children. And this is happening across the world. And so that's a gradual process that's going on. But of course, parents are role models for their children, of course. And so if parents decide to go on a journey of practicing values that they believe in, whichever tradition you belong to or no tradition, but there are values that you have. And so practicing those values is the best way to be able to inculcate values in children. They pick them up very quickly.
Awesome. Sadhviji has already joined. Sadhviji, if you can give me 30 seconds or 1 minute more, because there's something that has just come into my mind with the last question. So, and I want to ask you, Dr. Malpani, Ira, Ranveer, that, Sister Jayanti just said that, children observe their parents and then inculcate those values in their life without knowing it, without making any efforts. We have seen spirituality, or at least consciousness, as what Ira mentioned, help us differentiate how we do what we do from others who do the same thing, but we do it differently because of our inner consciousness, mindfulness. If we have seen it work for us, do we not have the responsibility to share this knowledge and experience with those who are upcoming in the similar profession, to help more and more people do the same profession with the same values that you have seen work and make a difference? Brief answers, starting with you, Dr. Malpani.
You're absolutely right. Just like children observe and do it, I think we are all aware. I think at least we are all aware and conscious. And if we are seeing something being done wrong, I think it's better not to keep quiet and better to tell them that, hey, look, this is not the right way of doing it. And they will observe you. But the point is they have to see you, right? I mean, I cannot go there and say, hey, look, I'm good, I'm doing this, and you do it. So in my profession, at least, it becomes very, very hard to teach doctors because each one thinks they're the best. So that is hard. But yes, like I said, we are into patient education. We are also into educating doctors. And we do have certain, where my husband writes blogs, I write a few things where we are trying to educate the doctors to do the right thing and to be aware. And I think that's a very, very important word, is to be aware not only of yourself, to be aware of the patient's needs. In my profession, I think the patient is to be treated like God, and they need to be treated with respect.
Ira?
Yes.
How do you... No, but how do you visibly, how do you visibly demonstrate the values with which you are making a difference, so that other people also start imbibing those values in the way they maybe offer yoga or make a difference to other people's lives?
I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who said this, right? You have to live by example. Just be the change that you want to see in the world. That was the line. So
awesome.
No, I think it's the same thing. I think, you just do what you do, and you tell people it's a jacket. If you'd like to wear it, wear it. If you don't, you at least get something out of it. That's all you can do. I think it's very, eventually, we are a function of a lot of things. And for an individual to invoke the inwards journey, everybody's journey is unique. Right? You can only be that moment of enlightenment or the point of trigger, right? And you can do what you do, and maybe, like you said, maybe stand there as a proof that this can also work in today's world, on today's parameters of success. And there is proof in the matter that you can't be this and not this. You can be all of it. You can just be the example for others to see. That's all. And it's only fair for everybody to take that inward journey. Otherwise, what are we talking about?
Awesome. I think this was a very, very valuable session because, we know a lot of things, but they sound like just pure plain philosophy until and unless we contextualize to our modern way of being, and then, like I said, visibly demonstrate that, if it has worked for us, it could work for you. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. Thank you so much for taking our time. I know all of you are busy, but Ranveer, I know, we had a conference in the morning, and then he went, changed, and quickly came in. Thank you so much, Ranveer. Thank you so much, Sister Jayanti. Thank you, Ira. Thank you, Dr. Malpani.